This is about advanced construction techniques for puppets. It is mostly about construction techniques for hand and rod puppets. A lot of these things can be used on other puppet types as well, but I've got a limited amount of time, and there's no one single way to build a puppet. Don't ever try to lock yourself into thinking that there's one way to do a puppet. I get a lot of people asking me questions about making puppets, and the first thing I tell them is, you know, don't ever think that something is wrong just because you haven't seen it before. My name is Gordon Smuder. I'm from Minneapolis. I do a show called Transylvania Television. Thank you. We've been on the web for about 7 years now, and all the puppets that are on the show I built. Been doing building puppets for a little over a decade. I've been a special effects guy for over 22 years. That's my day job. The puppet thing is kind of on the side until I can really make it pay.
Hey, it paid last year.
It paid last year, yes. I did a commercial for the Minnesota State Lottery last year, and I want more of that. I like to talk to people, so if you have questions, raise your hands. When it comes to materials and techniques and that sort of thing, like I say, you're talking about not a linear progression of ideas. You're talking about starting at the idea of I want to build a puppet, and then your pathways to getting there go like this. And so there's so many different ways to construct puppets. The first thing I get a lot of times is people will ask me, how do I build a Muppet? I cannot tell you how to build a Muppet. Muppet is owned by the Disney Corporation, and I'm not going there. Their lawyers don't like it when you do that. So I will avoid discussing the M word. As far as puppets go, there are many, many techniques that are used to make television puppets. Let's just call it that. Let's call them television puppets. That's good enough. There's all kinds of techniques used to build television puppets, and all kinds of materials. So don't get hung up on, oh my God, I don't have that type of fleece. You know, oh gee, I don't have that type of fur, or this fur doesn't look like that type of fur. Don't get hung up on that. The greatest thing about building puppets is it is so open and so free for you to experiment and play and have fun and create and express yourself. And then after you get done building the thing, then you get to express yourself some more by performing with it. So, you know, that's, you know, the beauty of puppetry is, you know, it's a creative process the entire way through. And hopefully, after you've performed, you've inspired someone else to go and get into puppets and learn and create and that kind of thing. I do get questions about legalities. You know, well, this looks an awful lot like one of those M-word puppets. Are you going to get in trouble for that? The answer is no. Does Ford sue GM for making a thing that looks like a used bar of soap with 4 wheels on it? The answer is no. They use a lot of the same techniques. They use a lot of the same materials. But when you design your own thing, it's yours. And no matter what you make it out of, even if it's the exact same materials and the exact same techniques as someone else, if you've made something of your own, that's your intellectual property. So I could go on for hours about intellectual property, but that's not why we're here. Next question. I will not build a puppet for you. I'm here to teach you how to build your own. That's your job. And a lot of people get frustrated. Oh, it doesn't look like what I wanted it to look like. Well, you know what? It didn't look like what I wanted it to look like when I started either. And now after 10, 15 years of doing it, I have some techniques that I use to get me to the point where I want to be. Boy.
Start with the dragon. Start with the sock bucket.
Very simple. I'm going to admit that I cheated with this puppet. because I did not develop this pattern. This pattern. What?
It's like Yoda.
Huh? Yoda. Oy. Now we're really getting into legalities. Yeah. Boy, you think Disney's going to sue? Check out Lucasfilm. Anyway, this is based off a pattern that is available for sale on a website called projectpuppet.com. If I get done here and you still have questions or ideas, or you just want to have a starting point to begin with, go to projectpuppet.com. Sasha has made some fantastic puppet patterns. They're very easy to use. He starts at a very, very simple point and shows you simple construction techniques that allow you to make a very cool looking puppet. As you develop, as you learn, you can find bigger, better techniques, bigger, better materials, bigger, better adhesives, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to give you some tips on that now. But this guy, he's basically a fabric store fleece, polar fleece. Go to your local fabric store and, on a sale day and get some really cool looking fleece. He is all machine stitched, which, everybody goes, oh, machine stitching. Oh, aren't you supposed to hand stitch all those puppets? Because that's how you hide the seams and everything. It's like, you know what? It's a puppet. Whatever you do, don't obsess. There's a puppet back there.
That's another project puppet.
That's another project puppet pattern. That's from the simple series. That is Rolly pattern. Yes. This one is called the glorified sock puppet. And like I say, they're extremely easy to make. I use a lot of his stuff, and I kind of jack up the construction techniques on it and make it not a weekend kind of project sort of thing, but a more professional type thing. The basic patterns can be done on a machine. They can be done by hand sewing. They can, you can apply other techniques to them to get a more professional result. Everything on him was bought at the craft store. So felt, little teddy bear eyes or whatever. I don't even think they're teddy bear eyes. They're
Post and washer.
Pardon?
Post and washer.
Post and washer, yes. A little bit of fake fur, and those crazy little pom-poms that nobody can ever figure out what to do with. I made him little dots on his back. So he's got regular fiber fill stuffing in his tail. I made a series of these just to sell at conventions because we go and we promote the show, and you kind of want to have something for people to buy at the table so they can take it home and remember what you do. So I made a bunch of these. I made this particular model. I made 3 of him, and I didn't show her. This is my wife Jennifer, by the way. I didn't show Jennifer, and then I tend to work late into the night, and she turns into a pumpkin at 9 o'clock. So.
And then I'm up at 6. Hi.
So I'm asleep. She's downstairs. She finds the puppets that I built last night, and I hear her say, "Ooh, that's mine." So she's keeping one, and the other guys were for sale. Anyway, so this is the kind of result with a little creativity and a good straight stitch sewing machine you can get from the stuff at projectpuppet.com. I don't get kickbacks from Project Puppet. It might sound like it, but the reason why I keep going on is because they are an excellent place to begin. They give you so much stuff to start with that you can't help but learn. So
we can pass them around.
Yep, you can go around. Go ahead and stick your hand in there. Actually, something I'm doing with this. When you start with a pattern and you notice that the pattern is too small, what do? Your local library loves you to come in and use their photocopier, and usually you just start out by photocopying all your parts up by 10%. And going in increments of 10% is pretty good. I tend to take the project puppet patterns and go up 120%. So you know, they're simple series patterns, tend to be a little small. I think they're intended for kids, but you got to remember too that when you do that, you have to when you're doing the mouth palette. These particular patterns start out, the piece that goes in here, the mouth palette, is actually either an oval or a round piece, and it's a piece of 1/2-inch foam. Let's see what I have. Well, this is regular kind of Joann Fabrics, you know, fabric store foam. You can buy it in 1/2-inch. If you can go to the yellow pages of your local city and find an upholstery supplier or a foam supplier and buy from them, even if you have to buy a little bit more than maybe you were thinking you were going to buy, it's really, really a lot cheaper than going to your fabric store, because they buy it from those places and mark it up for their store. So this green stuff, the green colored foam, I believe that this is something they're marketing now that's a more ecological friendly type foam. I believe it's actually a soy-based product as opposed to a petroleum-based product. But the mouth palette for these particular puppet patterns is a piece of 1/2-inch foam at their normal size. So when you enlarge the pattern, you actually need to make their mouth palette a little thicker, so that well, what it does is, can you hold that up? Can you put your hand in there and hold it up? What that piece of foam does as the palette is it actually kind of curls up inside the fabric and gives them a nice kind of rounded lip. So you want to have enough. You want to have enough material in there to actually fill up the area that is not being taken up by your hand. And so what I've learned to do when I go up 120%, I'll make the mouth palette out of a 1/2-inch sheet. But then I'll go to the fabric store and I'll get car headliner material. And this stuff is, it's a sheet of foam with a fabric backer on it. And it's really, really handy. I use it for a lot of different stuff. It's fairly cheap. You can find it in the upholstery section. You cut the same pattern piece out of this as you cut out of this, and you glue them together, so it's just a little bit thicker, and that takes up this, the kind of space. And if you put your hand inside that puppet, you can feel this texture in there. Go ahead and pass that around too. That stuff is also very handy for when you're trying to do like a thumb loop or finger loops on the inside of your puppet head. If you glue that stuff down to the inside of the palette, you can actually stitch to it, and the stitch will stay. Versus, you know, if you try to stitch right down to regular foam, the stitches are going to rip out and it's not going to stay. Yes.
So when you say the inside of the palette, are you talking about like if this is the palette this side or this side?
Okay.
Just to be clear.
Let's establish a terminology. I will say the tongue side of the palette for the part that you see, and I'll say the hand side of the palette for the inside part. When you want to put in a thumb loop or a finger loop, and usually when I'm putting in an upper finger loop, it's a piece of elastic that goes around the two middle fingers. So these kind of fingers are loose, so you can move them around and kind of get some face action out of it. The car headliner material allows you to just stitch right to it. Adhesives. when you're building a puppet, a lot of times you'll want to make a foam skull, and that foam skull is what holds the palette. It also gives shape to the head. More often than not, you'll probably make it out of 1/2-inch foam. A 1/2-inch sheet foam. A lot of people swear by reticulated foam, and that's what this is. This is actually just regular urethane kind of squishy foam, but there's some process that they do to it that makes it have this really, really porous kind of quality to it. And they use this as like filters, and if you get it thin enough, a lot of times mascot companies will use it like in the mouth of a mascot, because you'll be able to look out through it. They'll paint it black, or they'll use a black version of it, and they'll use it at like a 1/4 inch thick, and you should, when there's light outside, you can see out through it. Many well, the difference between this and this, I've never found any appreciable difference. They will say that this lasts longer. I've never found that to be true. They say that this is stretchier and more durable. I've never found that to be true. This...
It becomes a preferential material.
Yes. This is a hell of a lot more expensive than this. And it's also hard to find. You can get sheets of this through Project Puppet. And if you can find a foam supplier in your city, you can probably get it through them. It'll be cheaper through them than through Project Puppet. The only real advantage of reticulated foam is that it's more air. It's made up of more air than this, which means that this is lighter per square foot than this. If you're really worried about weight on your puppet, this is one way to save weight.
It also takes color.
It also takes color too. Yeah, you can dye this stuff with RIT dye, which you got to be careful though, because right away you're trying to overcome this color, this natural buff color. A lot of the characters from the M-Word puppets are originally were made from this stuff. Floyd Pepper, actually all the members of the Electric Mayhem were made out of this, and they were just raw. They didn't have a fleece covering on them, and they were either dyed or airbrushed. Gonzo's nose is made out of reticulated foam, and it's actually carved from a block of reticulated foam. I've been told, I've never actually done it, I've been told that airbrushing this is very difficult, because it's porous, it's like a sponge. So if you take your airbrush and you're kind of hitting it with color and you're trying to get it going, it's going to soak up that paint. And then if you're going for any kind of subtle shading, it's going to soak up that paint, and that it's going to go farther than you want it to. It's going to wick and take that color to places where you don't want it to go.
Is that going to dissolve if I use spray paint?
No, but let me give you a really good. Actually, he has his tongue is made out of reticulated foam, and I started doing that just to get a nice bumpy shape going on in there. Some of the Muppets have reticulated foam tongues, and really, it's really easy to do. You cut out a little heart shape, and then you take your scissors and you're just kind of clipping away. Make sure you use a sharp scissors. But I tend to use acrylic spray paints as opposed to, Krylon. You can get acrylic spray paints that are designed specific. Oh, there's a tongue. Actually, you can send that around too.
I'm going to go to the back of the room and give you guys something to pass forward.
Okay. There's a great line of paints. It's called Montana. The Montana spray paints. If you go to an art store and they carry the full line of Montana spray paints, you will see probably 6 refrigerator-sized cases full of spray paint cans, and it looks like a color crayon box. So the spray of colors that you can get from Montana spray paints is phenomenal. Like I say, I work in special effects. I build props for still photography and television, and it's not very often that I can't come very, very close to matching a color in this spray paint. an art director will say, I want it this exact color, and he'll give me what's called a PMS chip, Pantone matching system, and it's an ink system. And they use it for trying to match all kinds of colors. More often than not, I can find a Montana paint that is close enough that it will fool the art director. So, and that's what we're all trying to do, is fool our bosses, right? So reticulated foam, regular foam, sheet foam. Okay, you're building a skull, and you're trying to you have your pattern pieces cut out, and more often than not, I didn't bring a skull with me. But
this one in mine.
oh, can you actually pull it out?
Yeah, I left that.
Excellent. Thank you. Perfect. All right. Okay. So, well, this is cool. What he's done is, number one, put it together in a weird way. But, yes. Typically, you see this seam and you see this seam. Typically, those would be mirrored. They're, mirrored down the center. So this actually should have been popped the other direction and then turned on that way. The project puppet people will tell you you can use hot glue to put together foam, and you can. It's a little messy, and it's a little difficult sometimes. It's a little burn your fingery. I tend, when people ask me what kind of hot glue to use, I say get a low temp gun, and more often than not I say get one of the jeweler's hot glue guns, because you can, I mean, they use the little tiny sticks, but they're not nearly as hot as the big guns, and they still do the job. But you can put this together with a contact adhesive as well. And contact adhesive is pretty much what I use exclusively. This was put together with contact adhesive. The stuff that I use comes from Home Depot. And in fact, just about any hardware store, you can go in and get it's a product called DAP Weldwood. And you can get it, I mean, you can get it in gallon cans, you can get it in quart cans, and I think you can get like a half-quart can sometimes. It's fairly expensive, but if you're using it properly, it'll last you a long time. I'm sorry?
Just talking standard contact cement.
Standard contact cement, really. The stuff,
The stuff I used to put the laminate onto my drawing.
Yes, yes. It's DAP Weldwood is for putting down laminate. You can also use something called barge cement, which is a product that they use for gluing soles onto shoes, and that's a contact adhesive as well. If you don't know how to use a contact adhesive, I can tell you that now. Typically, you will have some foam, like, okay, there. You have a piece of foam in a pattern shape. This is actually a body. This is the foam. It's like a body sleeve, and you would, eventually you're going to put your hand up like that. You start out, you get your pattern piece. I tend to take them and lay them right next to each other like that, because those are the two edges that I want to stick together. And then you even double it over like that, just so you have a nice flat surface. Then you grab another bigger piece of foam. If you've got some like 1-inch foam or even 2-inch foam, just cut a little block of it, and you dip that into your can of contact adhesive. And contact adhesive looks like caramel sauce. Yeah, it's like a little like varnish. Yeah, it might be a little milky colored, but you dip it in there, scrape it off, make sure that you've got the end of your sponge saturated, and you just dab it on here. It doesn't take a lot. What you want to do is make sure that you're getting it coated all over the surface, but you don't want gobs of the stuff kind of dripping off of here. Then, once you've got this with contact adhesive on it, grab your hair dryer and turn it on hot and high, and just stand here and do that. And what you're doing with the hairdryer is driving off the solvents that keep it liquid. So you're driving off the solvents, and since you've got a very thin layer on here, it doesn't take very long to get rid of that. Once it is dry to the touch, then you unfold it like this, and you start pinching it together. Don't. And as you go along, you pinch it together. What I tend to do is I'll start at one end, I'll get that started, and I'll get the other end put together, and then I'll work towards the center. Just because if foam is very squishy and malleable, you don't want to kind of over squish one side of it, and then you end up with a kind of being off at the end. So secure both ends, work toward the middle. And that's how you get contact adhesive to work on foam.
Safety notice.
Safety notice. Contact adhesive is stinky.
Use in a well-ventilated area.
Use it in a well-ventilated area. One thing that you can do to help yourself a lot is to go to an automotive paint supply store. You can look them up in the phone book, they're out there. And get yourself a respirator mask that has cartridges that are rated for fumes. I'm going to tell you this only once. Those little white masks that you get for when you're doing, woodwork or something, they're crap. Never even bother picking them up. They will not protect you from paint fumes. They will not protect you from glue fumes. Urethane is a whole nother thing that I could go into for hours. They won't even protect you from dust, so it's not. They're not really worth it. Spend the money. You can probably get a decent mask for about $40 with cartridges replaceable, and then get yourself a Tupperware container to put it in between times when you're using it. You had your hand up first.
Quick note, if you get large in a gallon size or larger, flip it upside down 15 minutes before you're going to use it, because it's probably settled over time and that'll help stir it.
Yep, shake it up.
How did you get the indentation in the tongue? Was that good cutting, or did you use something else to hot and then make it?
Nope, that was just cutting. Actually, that particular tongue was made from this block.
Right.
And really, what I do is I take a Olfa blade, like a box cutter, one of the long, the wide blades with the long, thing, and extend it all the way, and I'll just slice off maybe a little over a ½ inch thick, and then from there I take a really nice sharp pair of scissors, and I'll trim out a heart shape. What I did with that was I don't have that ½ inch here. To get the groove in the center, I take it and I fold it in half, and so I've got this kind of bump. I'll just take the scissors and go along that ridge, and then when it pops back, there'll be like an indent, and you can clean it up with sharp scissors. The thing about reticulated foam, there is another advantage. Reticulated foam is very, very forgiving when you're carving it with scissors. It's a lot more forgiving than regular foam. When you're cutting regular foam with scissors, you get kind of like the clippy marks in it, that sort of thing. Reticulated foam, for some reason, hides those really, really well, and that's why Gonzo's face is made out of it, because every Gonzo is trimmed by hand. They don't have a mold. They don't have a machine. They have an artist sitting there every time they need a new Gonzo face. First they cut out the basic shape with a bandsaw, and then they sit there with the scissors and they trim it out. And puppeteer Tim Lagasse, I worked with him on that commercial that I mentioned earlier. He was directing, and I talked to him. He actually sat down, and he was the one who created the Gonzo noses for, I believe it was the new Muppet film. And that's where he was telling me about airbrushing, because they airbrush Gonzo's nose. And he actually went through, he did a total of 5 to get 2. So, and that was partially because, the people who were above him in the hierarchy, were very, very picky about how Gonzo looked and that kind of thing. I understand that. That's their property. And pass that around too. That's just a block.
Question over here.
Question?
How about the cement, when you're doing that, what's the elasticity or the bendability of the cement on that? Is it, when you glue that together, is that going to be a hard ridge? Or will it?
Something about that. This, obviously I didn't glue it very well because I was able to go and tear it apart. When you have made a seam and glued it together, you want to be very, very careful for at least a couple of days not to pinch it this direction. If you're pinching the seam flat, it's going to stay flat, and that leaves a dimple in the foam. And you know, especially if you're working with reticulated sheet foam and you do that, your character's face is going to have like a weird dimple along the seam, and it's not going to look good. Unless you want that. And then it's exactly the right thing to do. Pass this on too. That's just. Let's see. We are on skulls, and actually, thank you for skullness. This is one of the simple pattern skulls. This guy, I don't know if you recognize this character. If any of you are gamers, you might recognize him. This is Igor from Dork Tower. I'm currently working with Dork Tower creator John Kovalik. I'm building puppets of all the characters, and we're going to be doing video stories with the Dork Tower characters. Igor was really simple to do because he's basically just a tube. I actually added on his skull. Now you have to imagine the fleece is gone. You can see where the skull ends by tucking in the fabric there. But he's actually got a jawline, comes down around the outside of the mouth, and his front jaw actually connects right to his chest. The character doesn't have a lot of neck. And what's kind of funny, and John and I talked about this, was very often in the comic, when Igor yells, his mouth gets really big, but that means that this entire area back here extends, and you know his mouth becomes like this big cavern, and the top of his head, the top jaw, would be way up here. I told him we're not getting that out of this puppet. But he's basically just a little fire plug. You can see inside. His body is not made out of standard foam. If any of you were at the hat panel, hat construction panel earlier on today, they talked about a lightweight, sturdy foam. This is what's called a cross-link foam. The brand name is L200, but you can get it in many thicknesses. It's extremely light and it's extremely sturdy. For the commercial that I did for the Minnesota Lottery last year, they wanted a deer puppet, and so they wanted not just like the neck and the head, but they wanted like a waterline model of the deer, so like his entire back as well. So I was trying really, really hard to figure out how to construct this deer so that one puppeteer could handle it, first of all, and then so that the foam would be strong enough to hold itself up. And this foam was kind of the answer. It's got flexibility to it, but when you do pieces together and kind of seam it up, it has a lot of really good structure, and that's why I was using it on the body for Igor.
Is it gluable the same?
It is gluable exactly the same way as all the other foams. I'm trying to remember where that's available. Anyway, if you look on Google, let me Google that for you. That particular brand is called L200. What you want to look for is cross-link foam. Cross-link, and that's the type of chemical bond that it has. I think it comes in white and black. All of the fun foam that you get at the craft store has a good workability, and by that I mean when you put your hand in it, your hand doesn't like flop around in there, and you're not fighting to keep control of that puppet. That's one of the more important things about building a professional puppet is the control that you get out of it. Jim Henson was always loving Kermit the Frog simply because Kermit had such expression, simply because Jim could move his fingers around, and anything he did made him change expression. The dragon is kind of like that, wherever he's at. There he is. One thing to help with that, the materials that you make your palette out of, I tend to use a lot of cardstock. It is slightly flexible, yet it still can operate as a hard palette. I know puppeteers who will use Sintra board, which is it's
Corrugated plastic.
Yeah, corrugated plastic. But there's also Sintra is actually it's like a board version of PVC, like a PVC pipe. It's the same material, only they make it in kind of a foamed board, and you can cut it on a bandsaw, and you can carve it with an X-Acto knife. But the arm's length productions out of California will make PVC pallets a lot. The way that I know some of the Muppets are built is with a rubber pallet. This is actually a toilet gasket. Or this is the material that you cut a toilet gasket out of. This particular one says red rubber sheet, 1001 millimeter, 6 by 6 by 160.
You can get them at Ace Hardware.
You can get them at Ace Hardware, yes.
And you can just get a pack of like 3 of those sheets. I use them at work.
Yep.
What'd you call it? They're just rubber gasket
Yep.
sheets.
This is red rubber sheet. If you find an older mom and pop hardware store, sometimes they have this on a roll.
Oh, that's so nice.
And it's usually about a foot wide, and you can get it 15, 20 feet long. And that way, when you buy it that way, it's a lot cheaper than when you buy these little squares. I have no idea why they mark these up so much.
Because you have to cut them.
Yeah, but you think they'd have a machine to do that?
They do. You have to pay for the machine.
Right. So obviously you can get a lot of move out of that. And if you use that as the base, I'm pretty sure that Kermit the Frog has this as a palette. It comes in different thicknesses. 16th inch will do you just fine. You don't need anything thicker than that. And when you go to use adhesives on this, when you go if you're going to use contact cement works really well, but you need to bathe it with alcohol first. This stuff has a kind of an oil or something on the outside of it. It's probably from the manufacturing process, and you want to get rid of that so that the adhesive will stick.
Partially to help keep it from drying out and cracking as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, it probably has an oil that has a sealer coat.
Earlier you said hot gluing is just as good, if not better, than stitching. Is there anything that would need to be stitched down,
If you want to change the features of your puppet, don't hot glue them. I have a couple of puppets that I actually do change the features on every so often, and they are stitched down, and there's all of their features are stitched down. He's all hot glued, but if I was going to stitch him down, you notice he's got kind of like a little ring under his eye there. That's just a piece of fabric. What I would do is I would manufacture the eyes as units first, and I would wait to put the pupils in until the eyes themselves were placed on the puppet. Most people know the story of that the Muppets are all kind of have like a little cross-eyed action going on, and that's just built-in focus They do that specifically so that the character looks like it's looking at something. You'll see a lot when someone is starting out building puppets. They'll think, oh, I'm going to make some really cool eyes, and they'll go over here and they'll make some eyes, and they'll get those beautiful, perfect, round black dots put on there, and then they'll put them on the puppet, and he looks like Jack Elam. You want to avoid that. And it's not that hard to put the pupils on after the eyes are attached to the puppet. And it helps so much to make sure that the puppet looks like he's not like looking at 5 things at once.
Is that an issue when you're using eyes that are already like all together, like the little dragon eyeballs, where they're actually eyes all together?
The eyes on the dragon, they're perfectly centered. So when you glue them on, I mean they're always in the center. He actually has kind of a weird, smoldering bedroom look to his eyes that I didn't really intend when I built him, but I thought it was really cool. Beautiful. Love you, baby. Anyway, other things about eyes. The foam balls, these are good to work with. Standard ping pong balls. Everybody loves the ping pong ball. Be very, very careful when you're working with ping pong balls. If you get older ping pong balls, they are very flammable. The material that they're made of will go up in an instant. This is some kind of weird polyethylene ball. If you get newer ping pong balls and they are this polyethylene, you're going to want to take a very fine sandpaper and just rub the surface.
400 grit.
Pardon?
400 grit, 600 grit.
Probably about 600 grit, yeah. Just something to tooth up the surface before you either draw on or glue on a pupil. Polyethylene is specifically designed to not have anything stick to it. And if you provide a tooth on the surface, that makes it easier for stuff to stick to it. Custom eyes, like I mentioned earlier, I work for a special effects studio, so I have all kinds of machinery at my command that maybe you don't have at home, like a vacuum former.
Yeah, you're all jealous.
You can get small vacuum form units. You can also look at garage sales and thrift shops and antique stores and find the Mattel vacuum form machine, which, if you know how to make it sing, you can make it work really well. And it has a little tiny area to work with, but it's big enough to make eyes. One trick that I learned real early on is making eyes that are, these are some of them, and this actually was part of a larger piece. It was fully round. This was a paint palette that I got at the art store. And I took that paint palette and I threw it on the vacuum former and I sucked down a hot piece of plastic over the top. And then in order to cut these out and make them clean around the edge, I'll start with a round circle template. Take a circle template and I'll lay it on the top of there, and I'll take a sharp pencil and I'll make a pencil line around it. And then I'll use cuticle scissors to trim it out. And this is very thin plastic. Once I have that little plastic dome, I'll get some of the thicker craft foam, and I'll just cut out a circle and glue it in there with hot glue, and then I'll use that circle to glue it onto the puppet.
Should move on to fabric.
That, and then for really super customized, I actually cut my own molds on a lathe, and then I'll use that in a vacuum former and vacuum form larger size domes. Jennifer's now saying fabrics, and I have to listen to her because she knows what she's doing. Oh, wait. Blinking mechanism. It's so simple. Everybody wonders how you do blinking eyes. It's so simple. It's you need a round ball that you can drill holes through. More often than not, wooden balls work great. and then it's bending milliner's wire or hanger wire or just, I think this is probably 8 gauge or something, I don't know. But you have to bend it to make the leading edge of the eyelid, and then the thing that goes through the ball, and then you need a tongue that's inside your puppet. And what you want to do after you've got this, before you install it, you want to whip stitch like some kind of finger ring on the inside of there, so you can, what? It's tough without an actual puppet. So that you can stick a middle finger through that when you're manipulating and get a good thing. The other thing I found is really useful is photography cable plungers. You can use those as activators, and it's a cable control unit. It's like a bicycle brake, except that it's far more petite, and you can get them at like 18 inches long for $15 at a photography shop. Using those to actually activate things, we did a commercial for Berkeley Gulp, a Berkeley fishing company. They had a bunch of bass pros that came in, and they were doing, as part of their promotional contract that they get with the bass company, I made fish heads that went out. It was Monty Python's Meaning of Life. That I made fish heads, and it was their face on the fish head. And they only had 2 guys on camera at once, and they had little fins that would flip out, and we powered those with photography cables. And so we were off to the side controlling the cables, and they were all dressed in blue screen suits. And so all you could see was their face and the fish body and little fins going like this. And they would talk about this new product and how unfair it was to them fish. The eyes? Oh, sure. Let's see. Fabrics. I'm talking about fabrics now. This is it right here. This is what you all want to know about. This is Antron fleece. It is also called Muppet fleece or puppet fleece. Where, Gordon? Where can I get puppet fleece? That's what you're all thinking, because this is what the Muppets use. If you really, really, really want to make your puppet out of this stuff, you can get it from a place called Georgia Stage. You can look them up. The biggest problem that you'll run into is that the mill that makes this only does a run every 2, maybe 3 years. So when they have it, you got to get your order in. So you got to kind of stay on top of it. It naturally comes in this white, but all of these colors I got with RIT dye. So, orange, and it can be much, much more vibrant than this. It's just, RIT dyes work great. I've never bothered working with any other kind of dye because RIT just seems to work best.
What was the company again that you got that?
Georgia Stage.
Are they in Georgia?
They are indeed in Georgia.
Not like Georgia is in the Ukraine, Russia.
State. The funny thing about Antron fleece.
What? You had a question?
Yes.
What is the fabric made of? Is it polyester or?
I don't know, actually. It is made of Antron fiber, actually. And in fact, it's not even made of Antron fiber anymore. A couple of years back, the Antron company that used to make this fabric, that made the stuff that the Muppets were made out of for many years. You know what? I'm gonna pass these 2 around. This is old Antron fleece. This is new Antron fleece. The Antron company was bought by PepsiCo. It's like that episode of The Simpsons where the Japanese company, the fish concern buys the toy company, buys the. PepsiCo bought the Antron company, and the bean counters said, you know what, we're spending a lot of money doing stuff that we don't care about, so the only thing we're going to do now is carpet fiber. And immediately, the Jim Henson company bought every last bolt of the old Antron. In the intervening time, a mill in Georgia decided, you know what, there's money to be made here, so they bought the rights to produce a new Antron fleece. And so they, like I say, they do a run of it every 2 to 3 years. Before I started this Dork Tower project, I really realized I was going to be using a lot of it, so I actually just phoned up the mill and bought an entire bolt.
50 yards of fleece. Oh, joy.
Yes. It occupies the
Conversation piece.
Yes.
it occupies our extra bedroom. It doesn't pay rent. But
How much was it?
the bolt itself was $500 and $100 shipping.
How wide's the bolt?
It's 60 inches.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a lot of fabric. I mean, it's actually was not a bad price.
no. So
They were confused why we wanted it as an individual, but
You ever thought about selling it? Or it's like your child.
It is, well, I on occasion I will sell a yard or two, but knowing the difficulty of getting any, you know, I've had puppeteers call me up and say, please, 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 I have a project, I have to have it, can you sell me some? Yeah, you know, but I don't sell it casually. You know, it's just it's too valuable.
because we've probably used 10 to 15 yards of it already. So, you know, it's knowing that it took us almost a year and a half to get it.
And when did you get it? You used 10 to 15 yards in like what? Has that been like a month or 2 months or?
We've had it about a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
But you know, and I'm very careful about how I use it. It's always this guessing game when you're dyeing fabric to kind of figure out how much you're going to need, and oh, what if I screw up, or what if the dye doesn't take a little bit here or there and it's inconsistent. So a couple years back I built a puppet for the Project Puppet contest that they had. And this is all of the things that I have left from that puppet. So I saved that just in case I ever had to repair her. I don't remember what I did these two for. This is from one of the characters of my show. This is Archie the Leech. He's the sock puppet pattern with no arms, no eyes. He's just like the sock puppet with teeth. That's it. Mouth interior, tongue side of the palate. A lot of the Muppets have what they call ultra suede. It was originally developed in the 70s. This particular piece is from the 80s. Can you tell? Right? This I find a lot of actual ultra suede at the thrift store because there were tons of vests and pantsuits and women's skirts and things made out of ultra suede in the 80s. And you can pick up the equivalent of like a yard and a half of ultra suede for less than $10. If you go and buy actual ultra suede at the store, it tends to be $20 a yard and up. So
just look for a big pair of pants.
Yes, or a skirt. And not only that, usually it comes in colors like this, which works great for the inside of a mouth. So that's, I tend to use that a lot for this, this palette area. Oh, here's this guy. He's actually made out of. He's made out of the new stuff. When you dye Antron fleece, you, depending on the effect that you want, you dye it, you wring it out, you run it through a cold bath. And then if you want it smooth, like this.
You got 5 minutes.
Okay. You want it smooth? I'll talk faster. You want it smooth like this, you let it hang dry. And you kind of want to just, spread it out and let it, just let it air dry. If you want a gnarly surface to it, run it through the dryer. It's going to get this, it tends to uniformly pill like this, which is kind of cool. If you look at Kermit the Frog, in like the 80s, he had like a kind of a gnarly surface to him, and he's a lot different now. In fact, they might even be using a totally different fabric now, because of the lack of original Antron fleece available. This particular guy, he's got ultra suede for a palate. The fabric on him is actually rolled over. The Antron fleece tends to move pretty well. It's got a good stretch to it, so you can kind of roll it over, and I hot glued it down for his lip, and it kind of holds that together. That's just a heart cut out of fun foam, and run that guy around. Yes.
What color do you use to get the flesh tone? Like when you dye it?
Ah, that's a good question. When I was in high school, my painting instructor, my art painting instructor, told us that human flesh tone is not pink. Human flesh tone is actually more yellow than it is pink. And so what I do is I find peach-colored grit, and then I'll mix that with a little tiny bit of yellow, like sunshine yellow grit, and make that bath, and that's what he is. He's actually, I purposely made him very pale, because the character is supposed to be very pale. I don't have any of the other flesh tones, but you can get a really good range of flesh tones. I tend to be not very anal when it comes to that kind of stuff, so I never write anything down. And so I don't have any specific formulas to get specific colors, but I can usually pot shot and get things pretty close. Yeah, that's an excellent question. Flesh tone is something. I mean, if you're making people puppets, you're going to be making a lot of flesh tone fleece.
I imagine that test swatches might be a good idea there.
You could do that, yeah.
Takes time.
Yes, you have a question.
So what makes the puppet fleece superior to using other fleece or other fabrics?
The way that Antron, actually I can start passing this around too. The way that Antron fleece is put together, it has fabric store fleece will sometimes be fuzzy on both sides, or it'll have a pretty weak backing. This particular fleece has a really good thick pile on one side and a really good sturdy backing on the other side, and it always comes naked on the back side like that. It works really well, and part of the reason why you want to use that is because, and oh, good secret time. Yes, there is a secret Muppet stitch. Everybody always says, how do they get their puppets so that it's visible? The secret Muppet stitch is what's called a ladder stitch. And basically, you start out with 2 pieces of fabric, and you butt them up like that. You don't overlap them, you butt them up like that. Then you go in one side, you go through, and you come out the other side. But then you skip down and go through again, and then go across to the other side.
In sewing, it's called an invisible stitch.
Yeah.
A baseball stitch will also work.
A baseball stitch also works, and a whip stitch if you're in a hurry. You can whip stitch the 2 edges together. And once you get done with that, what you want to do is go in. Well, he's got stitches, straight up and down his face here. You can kind of see the one on his nose. You go in with a pin, and you simply just pluck the fuzzies out of that seam. And sometimes you'll end up with like a little mohawk, but you want to just take a sharp cuticle scissors and just trim it down. The Project Puppet will tell you to take a disposable razor and use that to just literally shave off that. But the weird thing about puppet techniques, I'm going to tell you how to do things today, and you're going to go home and you're going to try them, and they're not going to work for you. I swear to God, you're going to go home and you're going to say, "This is how he said to do it. Why isn't it working this way?" It's because I wasn't there to show you exactly how I do it. And so you're going to do it the way you interpret I told you. And then you're going to go, you know what, this would work much better if I did this. And you're going to find something else, and it's going to work. And you're going to go, oh, okay, I'll do that for that way forever now. Removable arm rods is the bane of every puppeteer. And I think every puppeteer has their own system for creating removable arm rods. He's got permanent arm rods. Igor's got permanent arm rods. I've tried 6 different ways of doing it, and I finally developed my own way. I sew a little L-shaped pocket out of fleece. And I have a jig at home with 2 nails, and I take the arm rod wire and I bend it around that jig so it's uniform every time. And it just kind of looks like a little paddle. And so that, imagine this is the hand. That little pocket goes inside here like that. And I stitch at the, actually it goes like this, because the thumb is on top. The little pocket is right here, and that L-shaped piece of wire goes up and inside and kind of hooks in there. And that helps you to manipulate that hand. And when you need to, you can back it out and get rid of it. I know some people who actually take the time to make 2 different sets of arms, one without arm rods and one with arm rods that are permanent. And they attach them at the shoulder with those gigantic snaps, those really big snaps. And I know some of the Fraggles are actually built that way because they wanted to be able to swap out colors of arms on colors of furry bodies. And that was pretty ingenious of them.
Fake fur source.
Fake fur source. You want good fake fur? Yeah. Do not go to your local fabric store. Because they may have white, they may have black, and they'll probably have like cow. And none of it will be longer than a ½ an inch. If you want cool, kind of groovy fur like this, long, shaggy fur, there's a place called Mendel's online. And their prices are very reasonable. Their service is excellent. If you have questions, you can call them and they will answer them for you. Do not try to place an order over the phone. They'll just say, you need to use our online ordering system because that's how we do it. But when I did the lottery commercial, I ordered about $500 worth of fur from them, and I got huge boxes in the mail. It was great.
So did you just trim the hair out of his paws then?
Yes, I did. It was all this
that
fur.
length, yeah. Okay.
And he's actually machine stitched as well. Fake fur is great because it hides everything. But this trimming, actually, I went to Target and I got one of the large hair clippers, those electric, kind of hair clippers. And I used that. I also bought one of the small kind of detail trimmers for guys for their beards, and that works really well for tight spot kind of stuff. I don't have anybody here who has it on their face, but when I'm doing kind of tight detailing on a face, I'll use a small kind of mustache trimmer to do that. Boy, what I.
We're basically out of time.
Okay.
But
I have to go, but I want to get a picture.
Okay.
Have you ever used any of the Velcro brand outside material? I forget what it's called.
I have not. I've actually been meaning to try that because that's you build a whatnot puppet with that, and you make it's basically a fabric that Velcro loves, and so you use it's like the loop side of Velcro, and you make features with the hook side. And you just slap them on there, and they stick, and you can rearrange them, and it's kind of cool. Yeah, I know they released several commercial puppets that you could do that with. It came, was it Go to Bed Fred? No.
I don't remember.
There were licensed Muppet Workshop puppets, that had Velcro attaching features and things.
Yeah, they sell them at Toys R Us.
Really? They have them yet? Okay. Yeah. There used to be one anyway.
FAO shorts.
What's your name again?
Gordon Smuder. 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 Yes.
Can you find the patterns for the hands on that same website?
Just hands? No. They have. In fact, that pattern will not be found on the website. That's a pattern that I got from a friend of mine who worked for V Corp. They do all of the Sesame Street Live shows. They're oh my God, he's so cool! Look at that puppet back there. You made a mistake of putting a puppet out. He's awesome.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, go ahead. So Gordon actually has, what, 4 more panels this weekend? If you catch him before or after, he will talk to you until I have to pull him away for his next panel.
Thank you. This was awesome.
Both of us are that way. We don't have a house, we have a workshop. Nobody else has been in our house for about 5 years. We're kind of trying to find a new place. It's gotten a little